Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to kind of go over a couple free response questions for you guys. This one is 2018 Computer Science Free Response question number 4. And it's a two-parter for you guys. So this one's called the Array Tester class. What this one's basically going to be doing is we're going to be having some sort of a two-dimensional array and testing to see eventually if this thing is what's called a Latin square. A couple things that I like to do first and foremost is I like to go through and either highlight or put things next to the methods that I need to complete myself. So it's very easy in Notability. We can use a highlighter, but if you guys are on like a paper pencil kind of test, just put stars or underline things. So the first thing that I notice is that we have one method right here that's going to need to be implemented in part A. We also have another method down here that is going to be implemented in part B as well. So there's two methods that we are going to have to write, but also I do like to highlight the methods that we have available to us. So here's a method that is available to us that says, as long as you can feed it two different arrays, I will tell you whether or not those arrays have the same values. That will be eventually helpful in our description of a Latin square. And then also another one that says, if you feed me a one-dimensional array, I will tell you if there are any duplicates in that array or not. So those four methods, two of which we will write, two of which we will utilize, are going to definitely be a piece of the puzzle for our array tester class. So part A. Part A is all about grabbing onto a single column of an array and eventually creating a one-dimensional list out of it. So I'll let you read this problem on your own if you need time, but in the meantime, what I will do is just kind of cruise through the essentials of this. First and foremost, this isn't a part of the test, but this is more so logic that I want to talk to you guys about. You will notice that when I call this getColumn method, that I am calling it using the class itself. So if you're using the class itself, that means that this method must be static. So that's the first thing I like to point out. Again, not necessary, but definitely useful for Java. The second thing is this. Notice that when I call this, I feed it my two-dimensional array, and I also feed it the column that I want to grab a hold of. Column number 1 is this column right there. I would like that turned into a one-dimensional array and given back to me. So let's see how this is actually done. On the right-hand side here, I've got the solutions for part A. Now, a couple things you'll notice, they give you that first introductory kind of statement, the header of it, but we're more so going to be talking about the code that goes right in here. So first and foremost, what I like to point out for you guys is I do like to point out that this one-dimensional array has to be created. So if we are giving back a one-dimensional array, we need to create one. And the reason we need to create one is because we don't have one to start. So we start with a two-dimensional array. So it has to have the same number of entries as my two-dimensional array, which means that it should have the same number of rows as my two-dimensional array. And then what we do after that is we just kind of go through and we loop. And we say, you know what? I'm going to try to do some purple. We say, I'm going to go through every single row that you have here. Now, just because I go through every single row doesn't mean I want to grab every value of it. What's convenient is you guys are going to be supplied a column. And that column is going to be constant. I'm never going to change which column I go to. I'm going to change which row I go to. So I need my rows to start at 0 and go up by 1s so that I can grab onto every individual row that is within this. And if you link that back to kind of what the image is on the left-hand side here, you can see that this column right here is staying consistent, whereas I'm stopping at column 0, row 1, row 2, and row 3 to grab all the information that I need. At the end of that giant kind of list of things to do, I always want to make sure that you emphasize that you do actually return that result. It is asking us for a one-dimensional array back. I guess I could use this color. It is asking us for that one-dimensional array back, so we definitely need to utilize that. So part A is usually some of the easier basic steps of the actual problem at hand. But what they'll do is they give you a lot of room for it. They'll oftentimes in like the later letters make you use that method. So here's what I'm going to do for this part. I'm actually going to do some color coordinating to try and point something out to you guys. Part B is asking about a Latin square. And they say this method is either going to give you back yes or no, true or false. Well, they give you a list of conditions that must be true in order for something to be categorized as a Latin square. And this is what I want to point out to you guys, color-coded wise. The first thing that we have to do is check that no single row has any duplicate values. Let me show you something. You're talking about that no row has duplicate values? Wow, there might be a method that we utilize there to help us out. Next up, new color. All values in the first row appear in every other row. Hold on a second. Don't forget, we got this cool method right here. If I feed it 2 different arrays, it will tell me if they have the same exact values. Perfect. We will need to utilize that as well. And then last but not least, we have that every single column has to have all the entries of that first row. Again, we're going to utilize most likely this method here to grab a hold of row number 1 and all the columns, but we are also going to need to utilize the column or the method that we wrote in part A so that we can actually grab onto the column and then feed it right there. That's going to be our goal for this. So all we have to do is make sure to follow those 3 steps. And if a 2-dimensional array passes those 3 steps, it is considered a Latin square. They always give you examples, but I'm more interested in the actual coding aspect of this part. So again, color coordinating is going to be huge on this one, just for at least explanation purposes. All right, test number 1 in blue. Does the first row have any duplicates? If it does, it is not going to be a Latin square. Guys, this right here, these are the tests for if something is going to be duplicates. We utilize that method that existed already, and it said, hey, as long as you call me and you feed me row 0, I will check that there are no duplicates in row 0. Check number 1, done. Check number 2 is going to consist of all of this inside of this for loop right here. This for loop, as you can see, is going to eventually go through every single row that we have here and just check to see if all the values are the same as row 0. So the idea behind this, you could have started at row 0. You don't need to, though. We tested up here to see if it had any duplicates. So now we're comparing everything to row 0. If you did start with row 0, it would still work. It's just a wasted kind of iteration. We are going to loop through every single item one more time, go through every single one of these rows. And the idea now is we need to utilize this method right here. This method says, feed me 2 arrays. I will tell you if they have the same values. One of our arrays should probably be row 0. So that means that we're comparing row number 1 to every other row right here. Your R value is going to start at 1, and it will keep going upwards and upwards until it reaches the length of your list. So it'll eventually test every single row. Now the most important part is we're looking for is, does it not have the same values? We are trying to eliminate bad arrays. So if it passed the first test, we've got the second test to go for. If it does not have the same values, we give back false because you cannot be a Latin square. That'll loop through every single row. Cool. Check mark number 2, done. Test number 3 occurs all throughout this. I now need to make sure that every column has the same exact information as the very first row. So how do I do this? Now, the trick with this one is we are going to once again utilize the same exact method we had before. The difference is, I should say another same thing, we are still comparing everything to row 0. We need to make sure if they have the same entries. But this second list that I'm giving it, it must be an entire column. That's why we're going to emphasize utilizing that get column, where we go ahead and say I want column 0, then I want column 1, column 2, column 3, column 4, so on and so forth from there. Again, making sure that if it does not have any duplicates, that we say you cannot be a Latin square. Now, I actually highlighted a little too far on this last one, so I'm going to delete some of it. because this last one is actually some of the most important parts that a lot of people accidentally miss out on. And that is, hey, if you pass all of these tests, don't forget to tell me that I am a Latin square. A lot of people will do all the work for the blue, red, and green parts, but forget the very simple last step of saying, yes, indeed, if you passed those 3 tests, you are a Latin square. So from here on, what we've got is basically submitted, finished stuff. On the right-hand side here, I did give you a couple more pieces of information for you guys, some of the guidelines that they usually give us. You can run through these and check for question-specific content as to where you earn points. Remember, on AP free response questions, you don't necessarily lose points. You can only earn points in these situations. There are a few places where they will deduct points, and I have that kind of written down here. There's penalties for kind of just some basic stuff, but nothing that really matters too intensely much for you. But if there's ever a question on this that you guys have, more so than the scoring notes and scoring breakdown kind of gives you, please let me know. I'd be happy to help.